2 years ago, I was living in a decent apartment with my friend and younger sister. It wasn't perfect, but it was home. That is, until things started to go very wrong. My sister had always been difficult, but her behavior took a dark turn. She became violent, not just toward my roommate, but toward me as well. The final straw came when she brought home a dog without permission, which ended up chewing on the windowsill and causing other damage to the apartment. I did what any reasonable person would do. I told our landlord about what was happening, complete with photos of the damage. When I reached out to our landlord, he dismissively told me to handle the situation myself as he didn't want to get involved in family drama. So, I did handle it. I got a restraining order against my own sister. It was one of the hardest things I've ever had to do, but I had to protect myself and my roommate. After all this drama, my roommate started wondering if we were still legally responsible for my sister's portion of the rent. My roommate questioned whether we really had to pay my sister's part of the rent, saying it didn't seem right to her. I explained to my roommate that unfortunately we were still responsible because we had all signed the lease together. My roommate wasn't convinced and wanted her uncle, who knew something about tenant law, to look at our lease. She asked the landlord for a copy. This simple request seemed to flip a switch in our landlord. Suddenly, he wanted us out, not because of the violence or the damaged property, but because we dared to question the lease. He served us with a notice to quit, the first step in the eviction process. We didn't fight it. We found a new place across the street and moved out by the specified date. My roommate stayed until midnight, scrubbing every inch of that apartment until it sparkled. 2 weeks passed, then 3. No word about our security deposit. In our state, landlords are legally required to either return the deposit or provide an itemized list of deductions within 2 weeks. If they don't, they forfeit the right to keep any of it. If they willfully withhold it, they owe double. I knew our landlord was aware of this deadline because he had mentioned going on vacation right after we moved out. I had even returned our keys directly to him. After consulting with a tenants' rights group, I sent him a formal letter on day 16, citing the relevant laws and providing our new address. The very next day, I spotted him across the street, rushing into our old apartment, clearly his first visit since we'd left. Then came the text. The landlord messaged that he would return what remained of our deposit if he could get the apartment rented by the following month. I texted back explaining that, as stated in my letter, he had legally forfeited the right to keep any portion of the deposit by missing the 2-week deadline. His response was immediate and hostile. In his reply, the landlord threatened to see us in court, called us nightmare tenants, and said this would be fun. He also threatened to sue us for costs related to relisting and renting the apartment, claiming these expenses exceeded our deposit amount. After a month of silence, my roommate and I decided to call his bluff. We filed a small claim suit. Since I had handled most of the communication with him, I was named as the plaintiff. On our court date, he showed up with a letter conveniently dated the same day he had texted me. It contained arbitrary deductions from our deposit, and he claimed he had sent it to us. The problem? That was the same day he texted me saying we would get what's left of our deposit if he could rent the apartment. During the hearing, he threw everything at the wall to see what would stick. In court, the landlord made numerous false accusations. He claimed we were terrible tenants, suggested I was partly responsible for the violence in the apartment, and accused us of property damage. He even attacked my character, implying I had somehow brought the violence upon myself. I explained the timeline to the judge, pointing out the inconsistencies in his story and showing the text messages that contradicted his claims. The judge saw right through him and ruled that he had willfully withheld our security deposit. We were awarded double the original amount, but our landlord wasn't done yet. A few days before his payment deadline, he texted again. The landlord sent a message informing me that the decision had been appealed. I didn't respond. I simply showed up to the appeal hearing, where he repeated all the same accusations. The judge upheld the original decision. Finally, the check arrived in the mail, but our landlord couldn't resist one last jab. In the memo line, he had written for gaining £20. I just laughed as I deposited that check. I used my half to buy a brand new gaming laptop. Every time I play on it, I think about how his petty attempt at revenge backfired so spectacularly. Part of me still wants to text him and ask if taking us to court was as fun as he thought it would be. But I don't need to. The double deposit and my new laptop are victory enough. I remember it like it was yesterday. My spouse and I had been looking forward to our vacation for months. Both of us work demanding jobs. I'm in healthcare administration, and my spouse works as an engineering consultant. We're usually buried in paperwork, meetings, and deadlines, so this 2-week getaway to the coast was our chance to finally breathe. We had saved up for nearly a year, meticulously planning every detail, from the beachfront cottage to the restaurants we wanted to try. The morning we left, we were practically giddy with excitement as we loaded our luggage into the car. My spouse asked if I thought the house would be okay while we were gone. I laughed and said it was only 2 weeks, asking what could possibly happen. Those words would come back to haunt me. We had always had a bit of a contentious relationship with our neighbor. I'll call her Karen. Karen had moved in about 3 years ago and immediately started complaining about, well, everything. But her biggest grievance was the massive oak tree in our backyard. This wasn't just any tree. It was at least 60 years old, majestic and healthy, providing perfect shade for our patio in the summer heat. Birds made their homes in it, and we'd even hung a swing from one of the lower branches. But according to Karen, it blocked the sunlight from reaching her garden. We had argued with her multiple times about cutting it down. Karen would complain that the tree was destroying her property values and that she couldn't grow anything in her backyard. I would respond that it was a healthy tree, fully on our property, and we weren't going to cut it down. She would then rant about how much money she'd wasted on plants that kept dying because of our stupid tree. My spouse would suggest that she try plants that grow well in shade, offering to recommend some. Karen would angrily retort that she shouldn't have to change her gardening plans because of our tree. These conversations happened at least once a month. We stood our ground each time, but Karen never seemed to get the message. We were 5 days into our vacation, enjoying a lovely dinner at a seaside restaurant, when my phone rang. It was our other neighbor. Our other neighbor told us we needed to come home right away. When I asked why, they explained that our tree was gone and there was a lot of damage. We cut our vacation short and drove the 6 hours back home. My anxiety building with every mile. Then we finally pulled onto our street. Our beautiful oak tree was gone. But that wasn't all. There was a crushed car in Karen's driveway with tree limbs still on top of it. Part of our fence was destroyed and a section of our roof had been damaged as well. As we stood there in shock, the other neighbor came out to explain what had happened. Apparently, Karen had waited until we left town, then called 2 relatives of hers, neither of whom had any experience with cutting down trees to remove our oak. Without proper equipment or knowledge, they had misjudged everything. The tree had fallen in exactly the wrong direction, crushing Karen's own car, damaging our property, and narrowly missing the power lines. Karen came storming out of her house when she saw us. Karen immediately started yelling that this was all our fault. She claimed that if we had just cut down the tree when she asked, none of this would have happened. I shot back that it was our fault. I pointed out that she had trespassed on our property and illegally cut down our tree. Karen insisted that the tree was blocking her sunlight and that she had rights. My spouse stated that we were calling the police. Karen smugly told us to go ahead, claiming the police would see she was just protecting her property. We did exactly that. The police arrived quickly and it didn't take them long to assess the situation. One officer took statements from us and the neighbors who had witnessed everything. Another officer spoke with Karen, whose story kept changing. First, she claimed we had given her permission. We hadn't. Then she said the tree was diseased and dangerous. It wasn't. Finally, she admitted she just wanted it gone but insisted she shouldn't be held responsible for a simple miscalculation. The police thought differently. Karen was cited for criminal trespass, destruction of property, and operating without proper permits. But we didn't stop there. We contacted a lawyer the next day and filed a lawsuit against Karen. The arborist who came to assess the damage valued our mature oak tree at over $20,000. Add in the property damage and the emotional distress, and Karen was looking at a substantial penalty. The court case was surprisingly quick, with multiple witnesses, police reports, and clear evidence of trespassing, the judge ruled entirely in our favor. Karen was ordered to pay for the full value of the tree, all repairs to our property, and our legal fees. She was also required to take a property law course before she would be allowed to make any modifications to her own yard that might affect neighboring properties. Karen had to sell her house to cover the costs. We planted a new tree, not an oak this time, but a fast-growing maple, and we installed security cameras just in case any of our other neighbors get any ideas. I'm a 19-year-old girl still living with my parents in Southern California. We've been in the same house for nearly 20 years, and we've always had a good relationship with our neighbors. We're pretty chill people. We don't complain about typical neighborhood noise like motorcycles or construction projects. That all changed when they moved in 2 years ago. At first, we tried to be nice. They seemed okay except for their weekend parties that would blast Disney songs at 10:30 p.m. Who does that? We had to call in noise complaints a few times, but we tried to keep the peace. Then, the real problem started. Strike one, the destructive dogs. Their dogs were aggressive outdoor animals that constantly tried to break through our shared fence to get to our gentle indoor dogs. They would dig, climb, and scratch until one day they managed to create a hole the size of a dinner plate. My dad, being the reasonable person he is, went over to talk to them. He politely explained that we had video evidence of their dogs damaging the fence but offered to split the repair cost since it was our shared property line. Karen, the wife, immediately accused us of lying and claimed that our dogs had caused the damage. When my dad mentioned we had video proof, she still insisted we should pay for all the repairs. After arguing back and forth with no resolution, my dad eventually gave up and just nailed some plywood over the hole himself. We thought that would solve the problem. Strike two, the bizarre accusation. A few days after our third noise complaint about their parties, Karen approached my mom in our driveway with a strange accusation. She claimed my mom had yelled at their lawn guy about mowing too loudly at 7:30 a.m. My mom was completely confused and told Karen she had never even spoken to their lawn guy. Karen insisted it was true, which made no sense since we've lived with neighbors doing construction and revving motorcycles at 6 a.m. for years without complaint. My mom was so confused that she actually approached their lawn guy the next time she saw him. She asked if she had ever spoken to him about noise, and he confirmed she never had. Karen burst out of her house when she saw this conversation happening. She demanded to know why my mom was talking to their lawn guy, and my mom simply called her a lying witch. That was that. We were now convinced Karen was completely unhinged. Strike three, the parking wars. Then they started a new game, hogging all the street parking in front of our houses. For context, we have 3 cars, 2 in our driveway and 1 parked on the street in front of our house. They have 2 cars, but instead of using their perfectly good driveway, which fits 2 cars, they'd park both vehicles on the street, one in front of their house and one in front of ours. This forced us to park our 3rd car further down the street. My parents got petty too. They'd move our car back into our spot the moment the neighbors left. This parking shuffle went on for almost a year until an unspoken truce seemed to form. Then I accidentally messed things up. Coming home late one night after work, I was exhausted and parked our 3rd car directly in the middle of the curb space between our houses. I didn't think much of it. They still had their entire driveway available. The next morning I woke up to my parents arguing. The neighbors had parked 1 car in their driveway and the other one in front of our house, with half the hood sticking out into our driveway. If we tried to back out, we might hit their car, which I'm pretty sure was their intention. I was done. I walked next door and rang the doorbell. The husband opened the door while filming me on his phone. I politely asked if he could move his car. He refused, claiming the police had told him he could park anywhere on the public road and that he was allowed to record me. I told him I didn't care about being recorded, but explained that we needed him to move his car since he had an entire empty driveway and it was common courtesy not to block someone's driveway. He insisted they could still get out and it wasn't that bad. I explained that we were worried about accidentally hitting his car while backing out. He asked if that was a threat. I clarified that it wasn't a threat, but we simply didn't want to be responsible for damage to his car if an accident happened because it was parked so close. He angrily told me he shouldn't have to move his car and that I should move mine instead. Then he slammed the door in my face. I went back inside and confirmed online that it's actually illegal to block someone's driveway, even partially. But instead of calling the police right away, I decided to be petty. The perfect trap. I grabbed my keys and carefully backed the car out of our driveway, stopping just inches away from the front of his poorly parked car. Now my car was blocking his from pulling out, and I was also blocking the sidewalk, which I knew was illegal, but I had a plan. I kept my car there for a few days, effectively trapping his car in place. Sure enough, he eventually called the police. He had the smuggest look on his face as the officer approached me. The officer told me that I couldn't legally block someone's car or obstruct the sidewalk. I respectfully acknowledged this and agreed to move right away. Then I pointed out to the officer that their car was sticking out over 2 feet into our driveway, asking if that wasn't also illegal. The husband's smug smile vanished immediately. His face turned bright red as the officer confirmed that he couldn't block access to a driveway and would need to move his vehicle as well. I moved my car with the biggest grin on my face, while he had to move his car into their driveway where it belonged. The final straw. A few weeks ago they had another of their wild pool parties. The noise was unbearable, and the police warnings didn't help. They'd quiet down for 30 minutes after each warning, then crank the volume right back up. This had been going on so long that some neighbors had actually moved away because of them. My mom finally had enough. Around midnight, when guests started leaving, she went over to confront Karen. My mom warned her that if they didn't stop these parties, we would start calling the police every single time. Karen and her guests just laughed and taunted my mom, which led to a screaming match. I had the common sense to record everything, and thank God I did. At one point, Karen screamed that she was going to beat the hell out of my mom. Another neighbor called the police, who came and calmed everything down. The next morning, I reviewed the video and realized we could file a restraining order for threat of assault. Now I knew filing a restraining order could cause someone to lose their job. From the sticker on Karen's car, I knew she worked at a daycare. A nicer person might have let it go. Too bad I'm petty. We filed for the restraining order and went to court. Karen tried to lie to the judge, claiming she never threatened my mom. When the judge asked if there was any evidence of this threat, I mentioned I have video proof. The judge allowed me to show the video on the courtroom projector. The case was immediately in our favor after everyone saw Karen's threats. The judge granted the restraining order while Karen cried and begged him to reconsider. But I wasn't done. I made an anonymous call to her daycare employer and told them everything. A few days later, I noticed she'd removed the daycare sticker from her car. She started staying home 24/7. I'm pretty sure she was fired. The crazy loud parties finally stopped. It's been blissfully quiet for a whole month now. During Christmas, our closest neighbors dropped off cookies and chocolates to thank us for finally solving the neighborhood nightmare.